crazy things have happened to me for where I'm at. I don't even, sometimes I don't even know how to, a lot of times I don't know how to quantify like a lot of my experience, not into words. So we're gonna try talking. Apparently some coughing. And see if we can figure out what the fuck I'm trying to say half the time. So I have this whole thing with, I think, learning to meet people where they're at right now. I think that's a big, I think that's a really big part of where I'm existing. I don't know that I have ever known or experienced. No, I shouldn't say that. I have on a few times, but not on concurrent levels. So I don't know that I've ever had anybody meet me where I'm at, like in a complete sense of me, I guess. My brother Ian probably knows more than I do, you know, on the spiritual side of things. He's probably got a way deeper connection with that than I do. And I think that my path is a little bit different from his because I'm still trying to balance out. I'm still trying to balance out material self with spiritual self, because a lot of what I was taught as a kid, like in regards to self-sacrifice and not setting boundaries, like treating people the way they want to be treated, but not having limits, I guess, to what that, or not predefined limits to what that means. Right? Because we have to know who we are so that we don't give ourselves away to people that are, you know, not receptive to you, or that have nefarious intent towards you. And the only way to do that is setting boundaries. And I feel like I'm talking like on a kindergarten level, because there's probably so many people in this world that have already, like, that have come to this realization. And I'm socially fucking stupid. Like, I righteously am socially retarded. But at the same time, I'm not unobservant. So I'm socially retarded in like application of or interaction with people. Completely socially retarded. My energy and their energy just does not mix. Like I don't speak any of the language that most people speak. I mean, I figured out a few along the way, but in totality, no fucking way. And so then, what do you do? What do you do with that? Because super, like, intellectually, I'm way the fuck out there. Like, I'm not a dumb shit by any stretch. And you know, it's funny, my buddy Adam and I, way back, we had talked about magnetic variable valve train, like electrically variable valve train, but at the cylinder pressure level. And that, you know, this is clear back whenever I got lost in the Oahes. And and then years later, I was looking at it, and somebody from MIT had tried it, but they didn't have the mechanical understanding of what was happening. And so if you look at what they rendered a solenoid operated valve that was still using a push rod and a valve spring, which in theory is fine, but the valve spring force to overcome it is astronomical. You know, like on a high performance cam, you're talking like 330 pounds per square inch. So you're asking a lot out of a solenoid. So the solenoid option is really not a good option. I mean, unless you make like a really long rock arm or something, but then you have deflection and bending and all this other crap that doesn't give you precision. But if you just made the valve stem and a high temperature solenoid, then you don't need the rest of the parts and pieces. And the reason for that is that the mechanical part, the spring part of the valve train is holding the valve against the camshaft. So you see, with the camshaft elimination, you eliminate the need for that. It doesn't hold the valve. It holds the valve open, not shut. And so, but it's pushing, like a mechanical force is pushing it open. So you don't need the spring. You need electrical force behind it. And you can do that, because you don't need a huge opening force with cam timing. Not if it's at the right spot when the cylinder's sucking air in. You don't have any. The inbound air is freaking opening the valve. It's like on a 2-stroke, so you don't need spring tension there. And on the closing side, the firing side, you don't need spring tension to hold it shut, because the flame front is pushing the freaking valve shut if everything's working right. So it doesn't. So like the design doesn't make sense. So intellectually, I'm not a fucking idiot. Like, somebody could go back and fix that with MIT, and you make billions of dollars. Just because you astronomically increase the fuel efficiency, the burn efficiency of an internal combustion engine, and then all of a sudden, like, 2-strokes are freaking not a problem anymore. Because you have such precise valve timing that you can control emissions. You could do what you do with diesel motors, and you could variably micro open and close valves to lean the mixture, to vent off noxious gases, to vent raw fuel, to keep the catalyst opening, all without doing it with like weird fuel. Just you'd have air control, like you wouldn't believe. So you don't have to keep adding and subtracting fuel, and so you can start making the two systems like really work together with each other. But the all of that's irrelevant to the fact that I'm a social idiot. Like, that no problem. Figuring out how to interact with people, I don't know how to do it. So that's why like on nights like tonight, I just throw it out there, because I broke eHarmony's profile one time. They sent me an email that said, "I'm sorry, you're unmatchable." And that was a huge eye-opening moment for me, because I've always felt super alone in the world, but I've never understood either how to rectify the connection. And so I've always, like, my entire life has been about, like, not it's like, but trying to understand that connection, but through analyzation. And you can't analyze love. You can pull cooperative light and dark pieces of it together. You can pull the union of masculine and feminine energy. You can pull the balance of magnetism and electromagnetism into play, or electrical field and magnetic field. You could pull the two of those into play. But you can't quantify. I don't think you can quantify love. I mean, maybe you break it down to the quantum level, but it ends up, what that ends up being is a soul unification that balances itself, from tip to toe. And I've never found that. Never found it, and I don't even know what to think about that. And then I look at, it's interesting. My brother and I were talking last night, about how no matter, like, we weren't raised in a place of self-love. Like, we were never taught to love ourselves. And so it's been a unification has been like self-love for me has been a huge balance. And I don't know how to balance out the logic, rational side of me. That's my challenge right now, is to connect with feelings. And I've always done it through example. Like, I'm a mirror of anything and everything around me. So unless I am able to connect with or interact with that another with another individual that has that same the same overbalance on, but on the feeling side of things, and then is able to at the same time is able to logically convey, because I don't there's got to be a way. I can't ask somebody to logically convey me. I've got to learn how to feel more. I don't feel like I have a good feeling teacher, I think, is where I'm at. I don't really know how to feel. I know how to think, but feeling is a strange thing. It's like somewhere out there there's a like live, like an example of how to live, like a balanced example of how to exist. And then maybe it's all self-love. I mean, like I said, I've been on a journey that's so freaking alone for so long that maybe it's got nothing to do with that. Maybe it's all about self-love, and until I find that self-love, then I will just walk alone, because I just don't feel like I don't feel like I have one unified connection. And that's weird. So I guess, and that stuff comes back to what do you do with it? And so days like today, super amazing freaking day. I've been in kind of, I woke up the other day and had something's different. This when I woke up out of bed, like everything just felt different. Everything shifted, and so I feel like I've kind of been walking. I feel like I'm kind of like wandering blindly in a place of wonderful blessings and not wanting to fuck it up. And so I feel like I'm tiptoeing around myself and what I want, because I don't necessarily want I want to consider the choices of what I want. I want to consider the outcomes, and I want to consider what happens with what I want, because I'm in a place where I have zero doubt that I will receive exactly what I want. So what is it that I want? And I haven't been able to vocalize that. I haven't been able to materialize what it is that I want, other than, I guess, like wholesomeness, to feel whole, because I don't know what that is. And so I imagine that wholesomeness path is just, again, walking into, it's a fork in the, it's got to be the self-love route. It has to be. It's the only one that feels right now. Like, I can pump into other people what they need, but it doesn't reward me in the way that it used to reward me. Like, I what I end up seeing, what ends up being illustrated to me is the imbalance in relationships. And in that there's an imbalance in myself, where I don't see enough gratitude. I don't express enough gratitude. I don't appreciate a lot of what I have around me. So I see that, because as my weekend illustrated, like there was genuine gifts given, but it still feels like on an energetic level, like the exchange the energetic level just feels so damn one-sided. It feels like pouring out, and I feel like it's time that I'm poured into. Like, I don't know what that means. And so that's where I feel like pouring Like, I have to pour into myself. I have to do the things that I want to do. I have to do the things that are appreciative to me. I feel like I've spent my whole life. A few people and I were talking about, because we've all been huge givers our entire life, and we all came down to the realizations, like, because we've all had multiple exes, and we've all kind of walked the same path, and it was like we all came to the realization at the same time. It was like, how is it that you were able to put multiple lives together? Because you can look back on the lives that were affected by any one of us, and you will see that when we left that person was in a better place than when we found them. And so we were able to pump ourselves into someone else's energy, into someone else's circle, into someone else's livelihood, and bring that place into reality, like without any issue, because it really is a place of feeling, right? And so, but none of us, not one of us, has been able to do it for ourselves, and not one of us understands why, beyond the place of we don't love ourselves. We don't love ourselves. Like, at the end of the day, we're not able to put feeling into ourselves. And then like, you put two of those people together, you put two people that don't know how to love themselves, and they've also realized that fulfillment doesn't come from putting themselves into someone else's life, and you end up really in a mixed up mess, because at least in the mixed up mess that I'm in, because nobody knows how to take the first step forward, or like, there's bravery in letting go and to take that first step forward, but then there's like comfort in still having a companion along to do it. But then it's like redefining what is that role in that person's life, like how do we coexist together as we're walking. Like, there hasn't been a good example of how to do that either, because it's weird, because we both know that our fulfillment's not going to be from pumping into someone else's existence, and neither of us know how to bring fulfillment to ourselves. And so it's a super odd circumstance to be in. And then wanting to live by guiding principles, and wanting to or just existing with intent, right? And so wanting to come from or learn that place with grace, and express it with grace and gratitude, because there's like 100 ways you can leave any one spot. It doesn't really matter, but what do you leave behind? And so that existence of grace, of like, how do you peacefully and mutually, like, teach and understand and come to a place of, like, you're 100% is there when you're together, and when it's not, and knowing that existence, because right now I feel like, God, I need so much freaking time to myself, that it's weird, because I know that I feel like I need an incredible amount of time to myself to stay balanced, and I also know that I have to have static energy on me. I absolutely have to have static energy on me. It's a odd predicament to be in, because it's I think a lot of hyper empathetic people have learned for so long to absorb, but nobody ever taught anybody that knows how to absorb into filtering what belongs to them and what belongs to somebody else. So I think a lot of hyper empathetic people ended up on, like, they can feel judgmental energy upon them, and if their self-esteem is not in a favorable place, then that judgment that they feel upon them, it's their own judgment, but they don't realize it's their own judgment, because they're putting that judgment of themselves out, and then the universe around them is reflecting that judgment back onto them, and they pick it up. But they don't see it took me a long time to see that that judgment was owned by me. Because there's so many similar traits between super hyper empathetic people and narcissistic people that there's if you look at the balance of narcissism and empathy in a single person, that really is a super balanced individual, because they're able to entirely consume the world within themselves, and they're able to entirely consume the world within other people. And so the balance in that ends up being, how are you no longer consuming the world? How are you observing the world? Because the consumption taught all the feelings and the intuition and the motivations and the, like, you know, talk about being collectively connected on a huge scale. So how do you shift that into observation? How do you shift that point of view to one of observation instead of energetic, like, feeding, you know, or vampirism? You know, I've called narcissism vampirism for a long time, but it was the connection. You know, I was listening to something and they were talking about there's super minor differences between empaths and narcissists, and nobody talks about it, or not. You know, it's not openly shared that the two are really related and they exist within the same person. One is just more socially acceptable. And so then how do you shift to a place of observation instead of consumption? Because that's a huge, you end up with an incredibly powerful person when that transition is done with. Because they can choose their own course, they can choose their own action, they can manipulate the people around them, like, easily. You know, it's not, you end up with a world in front of you, and then, but, you know, to be at that spot, the pain of both sides, if you look back at childhood, being at that spot where you really can choose what happens in the world around you with regards to people, now you have a person that also can understand the way that action is going to impact someone else, so you can take their feelings into consideration, you know, based on your own trauma. And so then you start being able to shape the world around you in a way through people that also benefits those people, right? Because you understand the feeling that comes with that statement or that level of interaction or that type of eye contact or whatever you want to call it. And if you end up in that soul touch place and you want to have a soul touch group of people around you, and all of a sudden you start observing that level of light, and all of a sudden, you know, everyone around you is like, what the fuck is happening? It's a pretty wild place to it's a pretty wild place to play. And then so what, you know, and then basically sit on your own rowboat and figure out what the fuck you do with that. That's kind of where I'm at.